I can't be for that. You know, in this body, we listen to lots of elected officials from states that don't have a border with Mexico pontificate on how enforcing the border is somehow cruel. I'll tell you what's cruel. Having 10,503 people underneath a bridge in shantytown conditions where children, where women, where men are sleeping out in the elements, and where even more come. One of the things that's striking about that Del Rio influx is many of those individuals had already been granted asylum in Mexico. So they had come from Haiti to Mexico. They'd been granted asylum. They were living legally in Mexico. But when the Biden administration canceled the flights back to Haiti and word got out, hey, come to Del Rio, it's Ali Ali oxen free. If you come to Del Rio, you can stay in America. It took 8 days for 700 people to become 10,503. The Biden administration has also shut down 5 Border Patrol checkpoints in the Del Rio sector area of responsibility so they can redirect personnel just to process the mass of illegal immigrants under the bridge in Del Rio. And of course, it's at those checkpoints that trucks carrying illegal immigrants or trucks carrying drugs into our country are caught. So with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris pulling the personnel away from that, we know yet more illegal immigrants will stream into this country. We know yet more women will be raped and sexually assaulted by human traffickers. We know more children, more little boys and more little girls will face physical assault and sexual assault from human traffickers. We also know that more heroin, more fentanyl, more illegal drugs will pour into our states. And by the way, not just the state of Texas, but every state in the union will have more people die from illegal drugs because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris refuse to enforce the law and are pulling law enforcement off of their job of protecting our communities. On Monday, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas went down to Del Rio. Let me say, I'm glad he did. Joe Biden hasn't been to Del Rio. Kamala Harris hasn't been to Del Rio. She is ostensibly the border control czar. But the czar can't be bothered to actually go to the southern border where the crisis is occurring. Secretary Mayorkas in Del Rio said, quote, "We are very concerned that Haitians who are taking this irregular migration path are receiving false information that the border is open." Well, I wonder, Madam President, why they think the border is open. Maybe it's because the Biden administration halted the deportation flights to Haiti. Maybe it's because Joe Biden is releasing Haitians who illegally crossed the border at Del Rio into the United States at a staggering scale. Maybe it's because Joe Biden halted construction of the border wall the day that he became president. Maybe it's because Joe Biden reinstated the failed catch and release policy. Or maybe it's because Joe Biden, on day one of the presidency, ended the incredibly successful Remain in Mexico policy, which was an international agreement that President Trump had negotiated with the government of Mexico that provided that when people cross illegally into Mexico, that they would remain in Mexico while their U.S. asylum case was proceeding. That agreement was phenomenally successful, so much so that last year in 2020, we had the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. Mr. President, I want to point out to you that some in the Democratic Party, some in the media, like to say, well, this problem has been with us a long time. This problem is not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Kamala Harris's fault. We can't solve the crisis at our southern border. If you hear elected Democrats saying that, if you hear the corrupt corporate media saying that, you know they are not telling you the truth. Why is that? Because last year, 12 months ago, we had the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. We know how to solve this crisis. The Remain in Mexico international agreement worked, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, for political reasons, decided to tear up that international agreement and declare open season on our southern border. This year, since Joe Biden has been president, over 1.2 million illegal immigrants have come into the United States. We are on pace for more than 2 million this year, which is the highest rate in 20 years. You want to see how much policy and politics matter? We went from the lowest rate in 45 years last year to the highest rate in 21 years this year. And it's all because of politics, because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have made promises to the open border radicals in their party. I'll tell you, I've been to the border. I've been to the Biden cages. For 4 years, Democrats went on and on and on. The corrupt corporate media went on and on and on about kids in cages. You couldn't turn on the evening news without hearing kids in cages. What they didn't tell you is Barack Obama built those cages, and today under Joe Biden, the cages are bigger and they're more full than they were before. Mr. President, every Democrat who stood up and lamented kids in cages in the House of Representatives, Representative Ocasio-Cortez has a famous photo of her grasping her head by the kids in cages. Well, I'm going to give a simple challenge for Representative Ocasio-Cortez and for every Democrat in this body. Go see the Biden cages with your own eyes. I've seen them, the Donna tent facility with over 4,000 people, with little boys and little girls on top of each other. Just a couple of weeks ago when I was in the Rio Grande Valley, the rate of COVID positivity in the Biden cages was over 22%. And all the Democrats who talked about this, if they don't go, if they don't denounce the Biden cages, then they're telling you that they're hypocrites, that they didn't believe it when they said it, that they didn't care about it when they said it, that it was all politics. It wasn't about their kids. Why does Joe Biden refuse to go to the Rio Grande Valley? Because if he goes, the TV cameras will come with him. Why does Kamala Harris, who's supposed to be the border czar, she's supposed to be in charge of this, why won't she go to the Rio Grande Valley? Because if she went, the TV cameras would come and would show the Biden cages. And the Democrats are counting on the corrupt corporate media to suddenly say, nothing to see here. 15,000 Haitians under a bridge in Del Rio, nothing to see here. Anyone want to know what Joe Biden's favorite ice cream flavor is? That's the news. Never mind 1.2 million illegal immigrants. Never mind when I took 19 senators down to the border, we went out on the river and saw a man floating dead in the river who died trying to cross illegally. Never mind the South Texas farmers and ranchers, the moms who told me, I won't let my teenage kids go out on our ranch without being armed with a loaded firearm, because there's so many human traffickers and narcotics traffickers that it's dangerous for them to go out on their own ranch. Never mind the South Texas farmers and ranchers who told me at round tables how tired they are of going out and finding dead bodies. You want to understand what's happening? Say there's no crisis? Come to Brooks County. I invite every Democrat here to Brooks County. Brooks County in South Texas, it's just north of the border. Brooks County, over and over and over again, they're dead bodies of illegal immigrants. The traffickers who are bringing them in, they're not nice guys. They're not humanitarians. They don't give a damn. That means if one of the illegal immigrants is a pregnant woman, is a young child, is elderly, is sick, they just abandon them. They leave them in the rough terrain, in the summer heat, and over again. The farmers and ranchers encounter dead bodies on their property where the traffickers have abandoned them. Mr. President, I ask you, is that humane? is that compassionate, the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris policy that encourages, that puts people in harm's way and results in people dying? When we were down on the border, we saw a young girl who had been gang raped by the human traffickers who had brought her to America. The rate of sexual assault is staggering, particularly among the girls and young women. So much so that a significant percentage of young women, before they take the harrowing trip with the traffickers, will implant a birth control because they know the odds of their being sexually assaulted are so great. And I'll tell you, as I was doing the roundtables, one of the things I saw also was the colored wristbands. So the traffickers are global cartels. They're criminals. They're vicious criminals. They charge anyone, a young man, a young woman, a little boy, a little girl, thousands of dollars, anywhere from $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 to cross into the United States. By the way, do you know there's 100% operational control on the border? 100% on the southern side. Nobody crosses the border without the cartel's permission. If you do, they will kill you. Every person who crosses the border does so after paying the cartels, because you will be killed otherwise. But often when they come, they'll cross and they'll end up at a stash house. I've been to those stash houses. I've been out on the midnight patrols with the Border Patrol. You go into those stash houses, and they're colored wristbands that they put on the illegal immigrants. And the colors correspond to how many thousands of dollars they paid and how many thousands of dollars more they owe. Often when they get here, the cartels will say, "Thank you for your X thousand dollars, we want Y thousand more." Tragically, it is at those stash houses in the United States where many of the sexual assaults occur. And so these immigrants, many of whom are young children, teenage children, when they get here, the Biden administration delivers them to their final destination. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and their administration are the last mile of the human trafficking network. But for the 14, 15-year-old boy who arrives in Atlanta, who arrives in New York, who arrives in Detroit, who arrives in Nashville, many of those 14 and 15-year-old boys owe thousands of dollars to the cartels, which means they arrive in your city. You might think Georgia is not a border state, but when teenagers are arriving in Atlanta, owing thousands of dollars to the cartels, they work for the cartels. And the cartels know who their family is and where their family is, and they risk their mother or father being murdered if they don't work for the cartels to pay off the cartels.